Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open in Transylvania at the home of the vampire king Vladislav. His eldest son Radu was born of an evil sorceress mother, which is why he has a face that only she could love. He's come to claim a vampire artifact called the Bloodstone that perpetually drips with the blood of Christian saints so that he can have a permanent supply. Dad traps Radu inside a cage for a much needed time out, but the facially impaired man has some tricks up his sleeve and some very long fingers. He pops a couple off and they transform into little demonic minions that are about as useful as some poodle retrievers. They walk over to Vlad's throne and release their master from his cage because Dad didn't have the initiative to step on them. Radu then executes his father for wearing that wig while the little subspecies unlock the vault and collect the Bloodstone for Team Ugly. A few days later, two American students travel to Transylvania for a holiday with their native friend Mara. Micheale is a scholar who has come to study the local folklore with Lillian, who takes photography classes or something. Shelley is the type to know the entire history of Prejmar Fortress, where they'll be staying, while Lily sees a funeral procession and says, "Look, a parade." The caretaker of the fort is a friendly man named Karl, who says that 500 years ago a handful of Transylvanians used this site to hold off an army of Turks. He shows them around and continues that the Turks fled after a large number of them had their throats ripped out by what they believe to be a vampire. The ladies just ignore that basic warning and meet another guest, Stefan, who says he's a zoologist studying nocturnal animals. Micheale is smitten, but only Karl is aware that tall, dark and handsome is the youngest son of King Vlad and half-brother of Radu. He's a vampire, but his mother was mortal, not an evil sorceress, which is why his face doesn't look like it was beaten by the Book of the Dead. Speaking of Radu, on their first day the girls visit the mysterious castle surrounding all the vampire rumors to take photos and make some noise. Strange and Unsightly wakes from his slumber and must think it's his birthday because three young potential brides are trying to break in. Unfortunately, Lillian cuts herself on a nail, so they leave in a hurry, and Radu has just been done by the old ding-dong ditch. The pranksters then visit an old gypsy woman and learn about the upcoming festival, which is held each year to celebrate the vampires saving the town. One of her ancestors stole the Bloodstone from the Pope and gave it to Dracula as a reward, which also kept him from feeding on the villagers. Without vampire attacks, Vlad's stories faded into legend as he remained a hermit for hundreds of years until his son killed him. The girls sit outside the castle because even if the stories about the vampire living inside's true, then he's perpetually satiated. Unfortunately for them, the new homeowner just likes to kill for pleasure, and all three fall asleep until the sun goes down. They wake up the same time as Radu and scurry back to the fortress, so he must think they're awfully slow because they left his front door hours ago. He intercepts them in the dark forest, but they just think he's some ugly pervert squatting in a tree, so run the other direction. Before Radu can attack, they run into his brother, who pretends to be out here reporting on moon squirrels or something. He sees them safely back, then returns to the castle where he finds his father murdered and his brother being a jerk. Radu says that his love for their father disgusts him, then probably beats up Steph off screen before going into town for dinner. He tracks down and feeds on Lillian through the cut on her arm, and then apparently struggles to locate her elusive neck. Before he can bite her, a noise scares away Radu, as Stefan has stumbled back to the fortress just in time to interrupt his brother. He chases him back to the castle, where Radu taunts him with the Bloodstone because Stefan has grown weak from not feeding. The morning sun is also affecting him, but Karl suddenly shows up on a horse-drawn wagon and sticks him inside a coffin on the back. He then brings Stefan back to the fortress and reveals that he's been whittling away an arsenal of wooden stakes in preparation for this moment. He's also got an axe to chop off vampire heads and a shotgun loaded with wooden rosary bead pellets, so Karl is ready. Unlike Stefan, who has fallen in love with Micheale despite never talking to her and saying that she has his mother's eyes. Meanwhile, the girls minus the sick one go to the festival of the undead, where villagers all wear masks and dance in a cemetery. A clan member jumps fresh graves on a horse, and any that it refuses to jump is said to be the grave of a vampire, so they obliterate the corpse with stakes. They then cut off the head, boil the heart and drink the water, so the girls think it would be a good idea to hang out with these people. Stefan shows up, so Mara goes for a walk as to not block the frock, and the vampire's mere presence prevents the gypsy from even trying. The two then kiss for the first time, but Loverboy begins to get a little long in the tooth, so he puts it away and runs off. Having just experienced that hit and run, a confused Micheale leaves to go check on Lillian and completely ditches Mara. Since she's now alone except for the hundreds of people around her, Radu is able to abduct Mara, but he kills the gypsy because he isn't that strong. He then chains up Mara in his dungeon with only half her clothing before leaving her with his fingerlings to berate like little chihuahuas. Radu then beats Micheale to the fortress, where she catches the vampire helping himself to another dose of Lillian's blood. Stefan and Karl enter, so just like before, Radu flees into the night because he doesn't want a fistful of rosary to the kisser. Stefan decides to reveal everything to Micheale about being a vampire, his dad being the dead king and his brother being ugly. He tells her to leave Transylvania once she finds her friend, and the two almost kiss like a half a dozen times before he gets over it and walks off. The sun is rising, but Mara still hasn't returned, so Shelley thinks that maybe she's chained up in a subspecies situation. Lily has died from what the doctor calls blood poisoning, so Karl says they'll bury her in the cemetery to protect her body from mutilation. The villagers are cruising around with a death wagon dispatching potential vampires and proudly displaying the dead gypsy woman's head. Micheale goes with Karl to bury her friend, but the cemetery happens to be right outside her killer's castle because it's a small world. Karl tells Shelley to leave now to save her soul, but she says she'll help slay the vampire, so he's like, okay, you convinced me. They sneak inside the castle and locate Radu's coffin, but it's empty because that would be too easy. Stefan wakes up and finds Micheale still searching for Mara, so he takes her and Karl to a church for safekeeping. Vampires only need invites to enter houses of God, not private residence, and Steph returns to the castle by himself looking for Mara. Armed with only a giant toothpick for protection, he locates the girl but gets captured by the subspecies in the net of embarrassment. Meanwhile, Radu walks down to the cemetery and raises Lillian into his vampiric bride so that he can immediately have her do some chores. He sends her to the church where Micheale is foolish enough to check if that's her dead friend outside, so she gets swiped. She's taken to the castle and chained up in the dungeon beside Nipples, but manages to use Stefan's broomstick to break out. Shelley pries the chain from the wall, then tries to escape with Mara, but the friend has already been turned into a vampire. Cornered from the other side by Vamp Lillian, the pair take her to a room where Stefan is chained up and forced to watch. Radu says he's going to desecrate Shelley, which just means bite her on the neck. But just as he does, Karl enters wielding a shotgun and the biggest set of balls in Europe. Mara charges at him but gets her belly filled with 2 Hail Marys worth of rosary beads, which is the only time the gun gets used. Karl then fumbles a spear attack on Radu but knocks the stone from his hand, giving him enough time to release Stefan. He in turn frees Micheale, and the two brothers have a duel with a set of display swords while Lillian chokes poor Karl unconscious. She then goes for Shelley, who holds off the vampire with a flaming torch while simultaneously writing her name. That's their entire fight scene until Stefan cuts down the chandelier of convenience, which impales Lillian to the floor. Micheale isn't able to finish off her best friend, so Karl wakes up and chops off the vampire's head because he couldn't care less. During this time, Stefan and Radu are having a pretty basic duel involving slashes and chops, but not a single thrust or mordau. The ugly vampire disarms the pretty one, but before he lands a finishing blow, Stefan picks up Karl's spear and thrusts Big Brother through the heart. He then grabs the executioner's axe of availability to remove Radu's head and becomes king of the castle. The dirty rascals return the bloodstone to the safe, so Stefan retrieves it and brings Micheale to his bedroom to give her the hint. She doesn't want to become an ugly vampire like Radu, so Stefan bites her to override his brother's vamp venom with his own or whatever. This causes her to die, but Stefan just stuffs her corpse into his coffin and climbs in on top of it, so hopefully she resurrects as a vampire. Down on the floor, the subspecies gather round the severed head of their still living master as he watches his brother spread leg the undead. And the movie ends.